Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
So when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leha, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.
Back at you in Gloves Off, and I have a wonderful guest from Texas Appleseed, Ms. Renuka Rege, and we're talking about a school-to-prison pipeline district. A lot of people would shy away from that, would look and confused, and they think it's some kind of urban myth or some type of conspiracy theory, but these actually exist, and it's a word that was coined long ago, or a phrase. And what actually happens with this is that they're alive and kicking, and more likely your school district is a school to prison pipeline district without you and the administrators and the board knowing it became that. And good morning, how are we doing? We're doing great?
Good morning, doing well, thank you.
Good, I want to thank you for what you all do, okay, before we start. And it's very interesting coming in depth with this, how can I say, concept of a district that emerged. But I want you to explain to the people out there who is the what is Appleseed, Texas Appleseed, and then we can take it from there.
Absolutely. So Texas Appleseed is a statewide organization here in the state, and we focus on policy. So we do extensive research, and we look at what are evidence-based best practices and best policies. And then we work to share that information with the public, and use that information to improve the policies in the state of Texas. And so we work in all different areas that can benefit children and families. And one of the areas that we do work in is in education and education justice. And so we really focus on doing our research, gathering data, getting the evidence, and then using that to make sure that we try to advocate for the best policies that can implement the majority of Texans and the majority of Texan children and families.
Okay, that's a great job. And how receptive are the school districts when you come in?
I think absolutely. I think there's a wide variety of responses here in Texas. We do have many districts that are very willing to recognize that we do have some deep-seated problems in our education system, and they really do want to improve, because at the end of the day, many educators want to do what's best for children. It's just that we have certain policies that are entrenched in place. And so some districts are very receptive to making changes. On the other hand, unfortunately, Texas is a very varied state, right? So we have a lot of diverse opinions and ways of dealing with problems. So other districts may be more wanting to keep doing things the way that we've always been doing. And so that's when we kind of have to go even harder on educating the public and letting the people know that these are some changes that would really be beneficial, so that they can then advocate with their officials as well.
Absolutely. Now, let's explain what occurs with the phrase, or what it is, a school to prison pipeline. Tell us what it is and what constitutes a school to prison pipeline district.
Absolutely. So school to prison pipeline is basically a set of policies and practices where essentially schools are pushing children out of school and into the criminal justice and the juvenile justice system. And so this happens in many different ways. So one way that it happens is that our schools, most schools across the country, have what's called zero tolerance policies in place. And this started back in the 1990s, coming into schools, where basically they were using concepts from the war on drugs and criminal justice and importing those concepts into the school system. And the idea was that if we crack down really harshly on minor behavior, like let's say talking back or disruption, then that way, hopefully we would prevent more serious issues from occurring, like violence or drug issues, things like that. Unfortunately, now we have like more than 30 years of data and experience to show us that these types of harsh responses, and when I say harsh, what I mean is automatic suspensions, automatic placement in alternative schools, automatic expulsions even, what we found is that that doesn't actually lead to preventing more serious behavior from happening. In fact, what it does have is a really harmful impact on our kids, because what you see is kids end up missing more and more school. When a kid gets suspended once, they have a higher and higher chance of it happening again and again and again. They end up falling behind in their education, and then they end up getting mixed up in things outside of school, right? So they end up getting mixed up in the juvenile justice system. And once you enter that system, it's very frequently that kids keep going back and forth and back and forth, and feeling like school is not a place for me anymore. School is not a place where I'm welcome. And so maybe I'll just stop trying and I'll end up dropping out. And then that's really a loss to society. So one piece is our zero tolerance suspension and expulsion. The other piece of school to prison pipeline is we have more and more presence over the past 30 years of police in our schools. And the reason why we started increasing police was to hopefully try to prevent, tragedies from occurring, like school shootings, things like that. But unfortunately, there also has been extensive research that simply having police present doesn't prevent those types of incidents. Instead, what it does do is that you have police in very close contact with kids who are making mistakes, who are engaging in normal childhood behavior, right? Kids mess up, right? But when you have a police officer there watching everything, they're trained to see everything as a crime, right? They're trained to see any little tussle as an assault. Anytime a child, accidentally has a vape or something on them, that's going to be a drug offense in a police officer's eyes. So kids end up being charged over and over for minor behaviors, and again, being mixed up in that criminal justice system. Instead of these things, maybe we should deal with them in the school system so kids can learn how to act next time and hopefully be on the path to success.
Absolutely. And I see the safety issues, and I've dealt with safety in many forms, and I see the bullying issue as well. And bullying has been my pet peeve since I started training, and I've trained others in that for many, many years. And not only here, in other countries, and you see there's a pattern that is set, and eventually, and I'm just going to pick bullying. Eventually, the person is going to be pushed so far back in the corner that he's going to explode in a violent reaction. And you see that with issues like Columbine, and you see that with issues in some of these Parkland. You see it with a tragedy that we had here this past year with Uvalde. And you also see the other side of the flip coin. The police weren't, Columbine was a start. That's a total different entity. But they knew about that. The police knew about that. They knew that this was being planned. They know all that issues that occurred. In some of the books that you read, you find different stories and the documentaries that were done. And if you study all that, most of the time, the police already knew this was going to happen. There were already signs and red flags running around, and nothing was done. And you see the best thing, that tragedy that occurred in Uvalde. For 90 minutes, they stood outside trying to figure out who had jurisdiction and who was going to go in and what's going to happen when kids were being murdered. And I'm not going down the police, but the police are humans as well. And there's a fear factor when somebody is assaulting you, this and so on and so forth. I see a lot of things with training. I think we need better training for them to deal with kids, which is, I don't think it's being done. or if it is, it's very minute. These 8-hour training, and I paid $2,000 for this officer to go get the 12-hour training. It's not going to work. This weekend getaways for get a seminar done, it doesn't happen. People don't know.
Right.
I teach that way. You need muscle memory for you to be able to do this over and over, and still you get people that are deeply involved in the martial arts freeze when something like that happens, so you have to understand that training is less and less in those scenarios, and we need the security, but I don't think the police is the right choice to do so, because the blaming of you got jurisdiction, no, you got jurisdiction, so something happens, there's fights outside of school, kid gets dropped in the bus stop, the kids pick on him, they get into an argument, they get into a fight, the next day the school police is trying to arrest one of them. That's nonsense. That's out of your jurisdiction. So there has to be a lot of tweaking of everything that goes on. What are some of your, changing this a bit, what are some of your, I guess, your studies that you've seen that provides positives and cons with police?
Positive. Could you repeat that? Positive what with police?
Positive situation, positive issues, and the cons, the negative issues that we have with the police, because we know that police see everything as a crime, and if a kid is doing this, they're going to assault and they're going to bring them in. We understand that, and there's a thing, especially with fights, there's a thing for self-defense. In Texas, you have something called mutual combat as well, and there's a thing with self-defense in the sense of somebody hits me, I have the right to defend myself. So now if you're punishing me for defending myself without proving that, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of wrongs. I see a lot of wrong with that.
Yeah. So you're saying, what are the cons with having police present? Yeah, so there's and also even going back to the conversation we were just talking about, school safety, police by nature is a reactive strategy, right? When something happens, they can react, and unfortunately we saw in Uvalde they didn't react, but in general police are going to react when there's already a crisis happening, and they're going to try to just make that crisis stop with whatever force that they can use. They have the power to use. But what we see that is even more effective in schools is actually prevention, right? So including with school safety, as you said, in many of those cases, many people saw the signs ahead of time. Unfortunately, we don't have good structures in place where people can prevent that from happening. Like, for example, school administrators or teachers who may know the child best may be able to intervene and prevent something like that from happening. However, the only solution that we're currently using is police, right? So we're just having police there as a reactive way. And so one of the cons is that, actually what's been shown in studies is that when something does occur, there's more casualties when there's a police officer there, because that's the only tool that they have in their toolbox. So yeah, so there's many cons. So one con is that children more frequently get charged with a crime for normal adolescent behavior, right? Kids' brains are still developing until they're 25. And so they're going to be making mistakes. And school should be a place where they can make a mistake, they can be taught how to improve it next time, and they can move on from that. Unfortunately, if they're hit with a charge, there's going to be much more serious consequences for their entire life, right? That's going to be something that's on their record, at least until they become an adult. They're going to, unfortunately, recidivate back and forth into the juvenile criminal system. So having just charges, that's one of the cons. Another con is that police officers frequently use force on children, unfortunately. And we've seen there's every so often there's a viral video that comes up on the internet from somewhere in the country where there was a little boy or a little girl who, for example, didn't want to get up out of their seat, right? They were having a bad day. They didn't want to listen. to the adult, which is not correct. I'm not saying that they should be allowed to do that. However, it doesn't really justify a police officer coming in and tackling them to the ground, which is what we see in a lot of these videos. And so that kind of force, it has a lasting effect on children, both the one that it happened to and the ones that witnessed it, right? So it puts fear into kids, puts fear into their minds. They're thinking like, oh, maybe like I need to be super, super scared. I need to be super careful. I can't afford to make any mistakes because then something like this could happen to me. And you know, I wouldn't say, and here at Texas Appleseed, we wouldn't say that that's an environment that we want our schools to be. We want our schools to be a safe and supportive place where kids can learn how to act and how to be a member of society. And so one thing I forgot to mention is that these school to prison pipeline effects, what our research and data has shown is that they have more of an effect on Black kids, Hispanic kids, and kids with disabilities. Okay, so there is a disproportionate effect on minority children. And so that's one of the biggest problems because we're funneling children from school straight into the criminal justice system when they grow up.
You know, one of the major comments that I've heard some, you know, board member make was, we're not sending them to prison. What are you talking about? No, you're putting them in the penal system. That's what we're talking about.
Right. Right. It is not necessarily that every time they're directly going to prison, but it's the long-term effect over time, right? Because when you put them in the penal system first, they may get, you know, they may get released the first time, they may get probation, they may get whatever it is. But unfortunately, as soon as you start putting those conditions on kids, every time they mess up, it'll get more and more serious, right? And they're feeling less and less supported by school, right? So in the long run, more often than not is where it ends up as prison.
Absolutely. Now, what are, besides the no tolerance, what are some other policies that you've seen? What's the most common policy that school districts have that constitute that? What is the most one that you've seen throughout the school districts and they think it's normal to do this? What's
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that's here in Texas is that kids are being moved to the disciplinary alternative education programs for any kind of offense, right? There are some offenses that we have in state law that say it's mandatory to move a child from their regular school into the disciplinary alternative school. And then, but at the same time, schools also have discretion and they can move kids to those schools for, you know, whatever type of offenses that they feel is appropriate. And so, you know, some people think that an alternative school is kind of the same thing as a regular school, but it really isn't. You know, you're taking kids out of their normal school environment and you're taking many kids who might have other issues and placing them all into one alternative school. So that's already a problem. And then you know, the quality, the variety of the classes that's offered, the activities that's offered, things like that are very inferior to in a regular school. Many disciplinary alternative schools, they only have kind of kids on laptops doing their things online all day, as opposed to regular education. So it's actually removing kids from their education and having them fall further and further behind. The other thing is not only are kids being placed there for very minor things, it's that they're placed there for a long time. A lot of times, you know, 30 days, 60 days, something like that. And so that's a really long time to take a kid out of their school when you think about a child's perspective. And so they feel really disconnected from their peers, from their teachers that they're originally with. And then there's a lot of issues when they're supposed to be transitioning back. That's another point where kids often drop out because, you know, there might be stigma that other kids know that you were over there and, you know, you might be really behind in your classes. You might feel like not welcome at school anymore. So this is a practice that's really like widespread in Texas that I think a lot of people don't know the harms that it has.
Absolutely. Here, one of the districts has what they call the youth first program.
Okay.
So in other words, if you commit the first offense. Oh, you're only going to be there for 10 days, but you better be doing all this other stuff for it. If not, you're going to, and and I saw it, I witnessed it. And if not, you're going to get another 10 days. And if you're not, you're going to get another 20. And then,
Yes.
and the officers and the people that you deal with,
Yes.
they have no scruples. They could care less. They have no feelings. They could, you know what I'm saying? And I saw a lot of stuff that was, profiling extensively toward kids. If I see you with 2 or 3, you're considered a gang. If I see, but not. How about the football players hanging together? How about the guys in band hanging together? How about the cheerleaders? There, you know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
it was, and if we see you there, we'll place you in a note, and we're going to send it to the police for them to realize that you're part of the gang. So you start seeing those things, and you're like, wait a minute, that's profiling.
Yes.
And that's profiling in a very dangerous manner. And
Yes.
we're here in Texas, and Texas has a lot of that profiling issues, that social status prejudice, that ethical prejudice. You have all those things that are widely spread within our law enforcement. Period.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It doesn't exist. Well, it exists very much so. And so you have that stigma that it's already out there. And now you have profiling for this and sending them off. I found that very dangerous. And just because, you know what I'm saying? And if I catch you here, you can come back here. And it was always very, it's very detrimental. And I'm not saying that there's some kids that are born bad, period. There's people that just have that natural cause to it, as well as adults. But what I'm getting from teachers, what I'm getting from administrators, what I'm getting across from a lot of individuals that work within the districts is the kids are the problem, the parents are the problem, the kids are the problem. But how about you all aren't the problem? If we got bad kids, we surely have bad cops. We surely have bad principals. We surely have bad teachers. We surely have bad doctors and bad martial art instructors. And on the line, we can't just have that discrimination towards our kids that their kids are bad and the parents are bad. You know what I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
that's there has to stop. That's what I think it's dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, kids grow up into adults. So it's not just that you have bad kids, and that's it. But so, I mean, the thing about that, it's the kids' fault, it's the parents' fault for not teaching the kids, that kind of thing. The problem is, like, from the school system perspective, the school cannot control what is happening at home, right? They can't control what the parents are doing. They can't control what's happening outside of school, but they have full control over what's happening at school. And kids are at school for the majority of the day that they're awake, right? And it's up to the school to decide how they are going to educate the kids while they're in their care, right? And just because if they think that the parents are not doing something, then they need to do everything that they can do to support the kids, because their mission is to prepare these kids to be members of society, right? The whole point of the school system is to prepare kids to contribute to society. And when they're taking these actions, right, like they have a choice that, for example, one choice is, if something happens at school, should I discipline this child within the school system, or should I send them into the penal system, right? That's a choice that they can make most of the time. There's some mandatory things, but most of the time they can decide that. And if they choose to deal with it in the school, of course, have discipline, have rules, have structure, but use it as an opportunity to teach kids how they should act, then that's going to put a kid on a path to success, right? Unfortunately, if they just choose to push everything to the penal system, then we know that's going to put the kids on a path to failure. And so that all of those choices have nothing to do with what the parents are doing outside of school. That's everything that's happening in school. And especially, I know that one of the most common reasons why kids are being arrested these days is for things like vaping, right? For having vapes. Sure. That's something that, it doesn't justify, even if you feel that the parents should be teaching more about that and controlling their kids' access and all of that, it doesn't justify just, sending the kids off to the penal system from the school, right? Maybe we need to implement more education in our schools about why this is harmful, like for kids. Maybe we need to be, providing more counseling or mental health, something like that. But yeah, all of us are working together in order to raise the children. And so just kind of trying to push the blame one way or another is not helpful.
And I'm glad you touched with the vape issue. The issues that I get is the parents should know better. What I'm seeing, the kids bring it in, they buy it from China. Okay, they bring it through the internet. You're like, okay, well, how did they get into school? How come we have such much numbers? Somebody, how are they getting it inside? If you guys are, they're very smart. They put it in here and they make it in their phone case, and they have pens that look like shoelaces. And I mean, I've heard everything, and I'm like, okay, show me that. Show me the proof of that. They can't show it. They can't demonstrate it. Show me. Then we can start. We can start figuring out what it is. Just don't say, they put it here and they put it there, and they buy pants that have laces that they can vape with, and you're like, are you serious? Understand what I'm saying? And we have that, then we can know what it is. And if you already know what it is, then you guys can stop it, because that's visible to the. So I don't, to me, it's a security issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to get kids that are going to try to, the criminal mindset is going to try to connive its way inside. But the criminal mindset can be from a person that's doing a legal job as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And what I get here in what I'm getting with, and I've interviewed, I've been and talked to many parents and I've seen and is many of them are getting the same story. My kid got the vape pen in the bathroom. Crime Stoppers came over. The kid gets arrested because of a Crime Stoppers tip. Then they're using Crime Stoppers to get refunds. I don't think the kid understand that. That's somebody else that has more of a nefarious mindset, that is more criminally oriented in those things, that is doing that at the cost of our youth over here. And then when you tell people that, they're like, wait a minute, it's not happening. No, but it's happening. How can you have 35 same stories, 15 people telling you the same thing happened from different schools?
Yeah.
It's too much out there that doesn't fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they blame the parents, and they blame the things, and they blame that they send them on the internet, they buy them from the internet through China, through TikTok. And you're like, really? I don't buy those stories. I mean, maybe we have to do. I know the tobacco companies, which control the vaping and the e-cigarettes, lobby a lot for their bills to be passed. But if we have this pandemic, I think we should have a law that says, you know what, you can't sell this inside city limits, period. You know what I'm saying? So you have synthetic. They go, they have synthetic drugs, and they're selling it on the corner store. They're synthetic drugs, and they're selling marijuana, and they're selling in the. Why are they selling it if they know what it is? You know what I'm saying? There has to be parameters of, if you know what it is, then stop it from its production.
Right. And the other thing is, a lot of these are even being marketed towards kids in a way, like kind of with the different flavors and packaging, very colorful packaging, like showing that it's almost like candy, kind of like that kind of marketing. And so, kids are really easily influenced. And if this is being marketed towards you, it's easy to buy it, everybody's doing it, that kind of thing, then that's a problem. And so, unfortunately, for some reason, it seems like we bring all the consequences on the kids, who are the youngest people who are making bad decisions, but we're not putting any accountability or responsibility on the adults who are maybe selling this kind of stuff, providing this very easily. And maybe that's where we need to be focusing some of our attention, is on, like, because we have limits on advertising for cigarettes, and alcohol are not allowed to be advertised to minors, right? So maybe that's some kind of regulations that we need to have on people who are selling this stuff.
Absolutely. No, you brought up some very good points. That right there is a very, very good point that you have. It's a great idea. The marketing towards pens and the synthetics and stuff like that towards kids, we can't do that. Just like cigarettes. You just brought out an excellent thing. So I think we should bring that forth to our legislators and see, because apparently they have an educational session that's going to be coming up as an emergency, and maybe we have to work on something like that and get the ear of the governor, because the governor is very adamant about this whole thing. But punishing people is not the issue if you have, you know what I'm saying? If you have a problem,
Yeah.
you know, we all would come up in the ranch down here in South Texas, and everybody, if you had a dog that ate your chickens, that dog was a dead dog. That's what everybody. How about train the dog not to eat the chickens? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Right.
You know, if we have that type of mentality, then we're going to have a lot of dead dogs in everybody's backyard. You know, so we have to change that mentality. Start training and start educating them. That's not what you do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, because when you just resort only to punishment, first of all, you're not addressing the problem, you're not preventing it from happening in the future. It's just going to keep on happening to more and more people, more and more kids. And then also I don't want to say, like, you're kind of like losing or sacrificing a whole bunch of kids, right? A whole bunch of kids who could have, if we didn't just send them to the penal system, they could have become scientists, they could have become doctors, they could have done all these things if they had an opportunity to get an education and graduate. But unfortunately, we're not putting them on the path to success.
No, and I think that's what we have to come back with. I know vaping's an issue. What is another policy that you see that is detrimental in that favor, that you see it mirrored in many school districts throughout Texas, that also needs to be addressed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say another big issue we have is disruption. There are issues with kids that are disrupting classes, right? So we do have kids acting out, causing disruption. However, the solution that we've had so far of suspension, kicking kids out of school, it's not helpful, right? It does not address why is that kid causing a disruption. Most of the behavior that kids do, it's because they have some issue that's not being met, right? Like maybe they're having some issue at home, maybe they are not understanding the curriculum, so then they're just being disruptive. Maybe, it could be any type of issue that's causing them to act out. But when you just suspend, when you just kick the kid out, then they come right back and they end up doing the same thing over and over until they're finally kicked out of school entirely, or they finally end up dropping out. And so disruption is a serious problem. It does affect the climate for all the kids and the teacher and everything like that. But we really need to be figuring out better ways to teach kids to behave appropriately in class rather than simply kicking them out. And research has shown that, like, one of the things that is the best at making kids be engaged is actually if they have strong relationships with the school staff, with their teachers, and they have strong relationships with their peers. Then they feel, when you have relationships with a community, you feel a certain pressure that you need to cooperate, right? And you need to behave a certain way. But if you don't care about your peers, you don't care about what the teacher thinks, anything like that, no relationship, you're going to do whatever you want to get a laugh, whatever. You might be disruptive to get a laugh, you might be disrespectful, whatever it might be. But building those relationships beforehand is the best way. Like I said before, prevention is the most important thing, right? Rather than, when it's already a problem, then reacting, there's really nothing more we can do, right? So that's what I would say. I know this, like, disruption, disrespect is a big problem in our schools, but we need to start earlier. We need to start from the beginning, building those relationships to try to prevent that from happening, rather than just, again, kicking kids out down the path to dropping out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. if people are interested in finding out more about this, who can they contact you? How can they reach you all?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely reach out to Texas Appleseed. You know, you can look up on our website. If you Google us, you'll be able to find our website. People can even email me. I'm happy to do that. I don't know the best way to share my email, but it's
I'll share it on the description.
yeah, that's fine. You can share my email and our website as well. And we also have, you know, some social media pages, I think, that are linked on our website. So if people want to follow those. Yeah, because sometimes, especially during the legislative sessions, we sometimes put out calls to action that people can, you know, like, for example, we need people to call their representatives to either oppose this bad bill or to support this good bill. We put out calls to action like that. And so if people are interested in getting involved, then that's always very helpful.
Absolutely. Well, number one, I want to thank you for educating us, and I want to thank you for you guys. And if you're, maybe we can, I don't know, maybe we can set up some type of little town hall meeting for you guys to come down in Laredo and educate people some more. If we can do that, I think that'd be wonderful.
Yes, I think we would be very happy to come down and just, you know, just speak with the community and educate them more about these issues. And also, like, how is it specifically playing out down in Laredo, and how can we try to work towards improvement?
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you once more. And I'm going to tell everybody that we're ending our conversation, but I want everybody to go out there and understand a couple of things. You know, our kids are our future, and we have to take care of that. And you know, there's a proverb that every teacher always says, you know, it takes a community to raise a child. It's an African proverb, and I go, well, let's start doing it then.
Yes,
Understand what I'm saying?
absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Pardon?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So until next time, you guys be safe, stay safe, and God bless you. And thank you for sharing all that great knowledge. Till next time, much peace.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.